my friend, next step would be ethical issues. Like whenever you are whenever you are submitting your manuscript, you need to see like what is there any ethical issues as far as the submission of your manuscript is concerned. So you need to have the disclosure of conflict of interest. You need to like there could be conflict of interest. What kind of conflict of interest it could be there? Let me tell you. Let us say you are having one funded project. It could be DRD, for example, defense research project you are having, or you are working with industry. Your industry is your collaborator, and they don't want you to publish data. Unless they are having consent, okay? Because they might be having some ethical issues related to publication of your data, or they may not be allowing you to publish data at any platform. Like they must have decided that okay, the data should be published at this on this and this platform only. So that kind of conflict of interest could be there. So that need to be disclosed to begin with. You need to think of acknowledgement of funding resources, whatever sources you have. You need to think of that. Then online submission nowadays, because most of the journals are online, all the journals rather, leading journals are online. Then since they are having some limitations of page limitations rather, they will be advising you to submit information in supporting form, like supplemental information. So you need to see like what kind of issues are there, data you can, whether you can submit. There are some journals they will allow you to submit even videos in supplementary information, right? And there could be some health issues, right? If you are working on clinical trials, there could be some institutional review board. If you are working on some health related, if you are from health sciences, there could be some issues from your own institution. You might be it might be mandatory for you to have the approval of your review board, right? So whatever it is there, these are all come under ethical issues. And journal is going to ask you, is there any ethical issues in the data which you are going to submit? So you need to be ready for that as well. Next, style and language. Sometimes what happens, as far as style is concerned, there are different kind of mindset. Some authors, like some research scholar, they draft paper by keeping a very specific journal in their mind. But I will not advise you to do that, because sometimes what happens, if you are drafting your manuscript by keeping one particular manuscript or one particular journal in mind, what will happen? Let me close the windows because it is. Okay. So in that case, what will happen? You will be having lot of problems. Let us say you are submitting you are drafting manuscript on one particular journal in which page limit is only 4 or 5. So you will be omitting many your results, many your tables, many figures. And then if unfortunately your paper got rejected from the journal in which you were interested right in the beginning, then you will be in trouble, right? Rather, what is best practice? Best practice could be, in general, don't keep any journal in right in front of you while drafting manuscript. In general, you should refer what should be the title, what should be title, what should be abstract, what should be introduction. That in general you can understand what should be style, what should be impactful style, effective style rather. But you should write the manuscript in general, right? And then once you finish your manuscript, then you can think of converting that, fine-tuning your manuscript with reference to the journal in which you will be interested to submit. So this would be the better, because in case if you want to reduce the length, you can easily reduce, but you will be having at back end, you will be having the full manuscript with you, so that whenever in case of any rejection from the specified or the journal in which you were interested to begin with, you will be able to submit that manuscript to other journals. So that would be a right approach as far as the style is concerned. Now, very important, let me tell you, as I mentioned earlier, we are not, being an Indian, English is not our native language, right? So you might be having some problem. So what do you need to do? There are many, internet on net, there are many websites wherein you can submit your manuscript. Of course, you have to pay, and they are going to correct your manuscript grammatically. But I would not advise you to do that. What should be the best practice? You should identify the colleague in your own department, in your own college, in your own institution, right, who is having good authority in English, right? And you can check your manuscript. You can ask your colleague to go through the manuscript, and he could be one of the author, he could be co-author in your manuscript. If we can have this kind of practice, over the time, it will be easier for you to address this problem. Then article submission, select your journal carefully. As I mentioned, read aims and scope very carefully. Think about your target audience. That is also very important. Sometimes there many students, they don't they commit mistake. They don't understand what kind of audience it is going to have, because every journal has some different kind of audience. So you need to understand what kind of targeted audience you will be having, right? And what kind of expectation they will be having, and so that you will be able to understand whether you have a realistic chance to accept your paper there, right? So that you need to understand and follow guidelines. Whatever guidelines are there, you follow that. And most importantly, articles should not be submitted to more than one journal at a time. This is one of the common mistakes the student research scholars are doing, not faculty members, research scholars are doing. Because we know whenever we are submitting data, research manuscript, it will take like journal will take maybe couple of months or two, maybe more than that as well. So therefore, what a student, what research scholar may think that, okay, it is better to submit the manuscript simultaneously two to three journal, so that you know, दो तीन में से एक journal तो accept कर ही लेगा. So that sort of mindset is not expected, truly speaking, whenever you are submitting manuscript. Online submission, because nowadays many journals are having complete online submission. You need to, so therefore you need to understand how you are going to tackle with that. You need to understand the speed of editorial process, because that is going to be very, very important as far as the country like India is concerned. Because you know, in India we don't get any support from our employer, right? Sometimes in most of the foreign countries, whatever publication charges the journal is going to charge, many a times they are going to you know, hello, many times their government or their the institution, they are going to pay for that, right? But in India we don't get any publication charges from our employer, and therefore this is going to be very, very important for the country like India, how the speed of the editorial speed is going to be. Then these are some of the key factors, as I mentioned earlier. Key factors for selecting journal: impact factor, reputation, access to the target audience, overall editorial board, publication speed, international coverage, whether it has got open access, because this is going to be very important. And sometimes, because if you are really a senior research scholar, you might be the referee of some of the journals. So you might be having your own experience of that journal as a referee. What is track record, quality of you know, color illustration, and what kind of service they are providing. So these are some of the factors which you can think of while selection of journal. Now this is the actual manuscript template. This is how the manuscript should be formulated. You should start with title, authors and authors and appellation, abstract, keywords, introduction, materials and methods, results, tables, discussion. Sometimes result and discussion can be together, conclusions, acknowledgement, and bibliography. Let us start with titles. What should be title? The title need to be attention grabbing. You need to read carefully the guidelines of the respective journals. What exactly title, how, I mean, in order to come up with a good title, what my suggestion would be, you should read, you should go through the published research, as many published research paper as you can, so that you will be able to understand how the attention can be grabbed, you know, like how can you have the attention grabbing title. Keep it as short as possible. It should be around 150 characters. Avoid filler words like case study, effect of, comparison of. This should not be there in title. Don't use questions, because there are many students, they use questions. Don't use complete sentences. Phrases is going to be better. Don't use abbreviation in the title. And you should narrow the scope. Be specific of what is included in your manuscript, because whatever title is there, it should be based on whatever you have included in your manuscript. It should not be beyond the manuscript. I have quoted some example. You can see this is common example. Understanding the role of CEO for effective functioning of institution. This is what the effective title should be, right? The same title can be messed up like this: determining the mechanism of selection procedure of CEO as prevailing governmental regulation and political influence in actual appointment of CEO and other authorities of the institution and its impact on overall functioning of institution. You can see this is like very fine-tuned, attention-grabbing title, but you can mess up with like this. I have another example: proton pump inhibitor use and the development of new ischemic heart disease in non-cardiac chest pain patient. This is a wonderful, like attention-grabbing title, and this can be messed up like this: comparative study of various options of proton pump inhibitor use and exploring the possibility of development of new ischemic heart disease in non-cardiac chest patient in the age group of 50 to 60. You can see, मुझे पढ़ते पढ़ते भी मैं थक रहा हूँ, so you can see how, because you should not if you are having this kind of very lengthy and long title, you are going to create a very bad impression on reviewer as well as editor, because editor is going to have a quick review of your title to begin with, and therefore title should be attention grabbing. Then what should be title page? On title page we'll include list of authors, author affiliation, corresponding author, running title, abstract, keywords, list of abbreviations. And then this is how one of my paper, I thought, let me tell you, you can see in this, this is title page. We have got the title, then authors, their appellations, abstract. You can see this abstract, I will tell you like more about abstract. And then you can see the received paper, date of receipt, date of revision, date of acceptance, and date of availability, make it available on online availability, right? On these data also, you will be able to understand how the reviewing, how the referring speed, how fast the journal is going to be. This is like I have highlighted again: title, authors, appellation. Then these are some of the corresponding authors, keywords, because you need to have the keywords as well, and then abstract. This is what the title page is. Now what about abstract? Now abstract is again very, very important. Like whenever you are submitting your manuscript, editor and reviewer are going to judge your manuscript to begin with on the basis of your title and abstract. The first the milestone should be title. Title should be very, very clear, attention grabbing, and then abstract, because to begin with they are going to see the abstract only. Now what is expected in abstract? You can see here, this you can read like blue lines. Abstract should be around 200 to 300 words. It should not be more than that. There are some journals, they they accept lesser than 200 words as well. And then what you have done, in abstract you should write this: what you have done, how you have done, and what you have achieved. What does it mean? What you have done means like what were the objectives of your investigation. How you have done means what kind of methodology you have adapted. What you have achieved means what kind of research, what kind of output you have, what you have achieved, right? That need to be your results, the brief summary of your result. So that need to be reflected in abstract very, very specifically. Now I have quoted some examples, but like, okay, what should not be there in abstract? You should not have any additional information beyond what is in manuscript. Sometimes what happens, there are some research scholars, they are trying to put historical background of the problem which they are investigating. It should not be there. State the principal objectives and scope of the investigation. Describe method, as I mentioned earlier. Summarize the research. State the principal conclusion. Provide balanced summary of what was done and what found. As I mentioned earlier, what you have done, how you have done, and what you have achieved, that should be reflected. And common mistake, what kind of common mistake most of the students are committing? You can say too much background or methods, figures and images, because figures are not expected. Of course, graphical abstract is new trend, but I'm going to tell you how what the graphical abstract is all about. No references, no literature review, no abbreviation, no acronyms should be there. These are the common mistake most of the research scholars are committing. And this is the example: structure and unstructured. In structure, you will find, of course, आप ये objectives design ये नहीं लिखोगे, but you will be writing like what was your objective, how you have done it, what you have achieved, right? And therefore it will have like objectives, design, outcome, your brief results. Okay, that should be reflected. And if it is unstructured means it will not have any, completely mess up, right? I will quote one example. This is my own example. This paper was published in Journal of Physical Chemistry C long back. You can see here. This is the first paragraph in which we try to mention like what we are doing, what we are going to do, or what we have done, right? This is the paragraph in which we have mentioned like how we have done it, and this is the paragraph in which we have mentioned what we have achieved. That is why I said in first step there should be three, three reflection of three important key aspects. One, what you have done, how you have done, and what you have achieved. And this is what the graphical abstract is. You can see this is the graphical, like this is the device which we have developed, field effect transistor which we have developed, and this is of course this was for the field effect based transistor for sensing the bitex, and this is the summary of results actually. So this graphical abstract tells you like what you have done and what you have achieved. And this nowadays most of the journals, they are expecting you to submit graphical abstract as well. Now next part would be introduction. Introduction is going to be again very, very important. Now in introduction, you need to provide background, objectives and importance, literature review, and briefly state method of investigation. Most importantly, there are three aspects as I mentioned earlier: novelty, how novelty can be inculcated, literature review. Through literature review, you can inculcate novelty. Similarly, social relevance, you need through literature review only you will be able to mention how this is going to be important, and credibility. So whenever we are talking about introduction, all these things should be reflected in your introduction. And moreover, let me tell you, my friend, introduction may take a couple of months together because it's not easy job. It may take months together to complete introduction. This is very, very important part of your manuscript, and rather you should spend more time on writing introduction. If you could write like after abstract, reviewer or editor, they are going to read your abstract very carefully. If you can read, if you can drop your abstract more effectively, if you can reflect what kind of novelty we have, if you can reflect it has some social relevance, if you can reflect your own credential, then it will be easier for the reviewer to give acceptance to your manuscript. Now how it is to be done, this is one example. This is your own manuscript. This published paper, right? You can see this two paragraphs reflects the novelty. So what we have done, like novelty means we have taken the review of what others are doing. We took the review of what others are doing, and then we made a statement that in their investigation there were few pitfalls, right? That pitfalls we have identified, and then we made a next statement that this we are going to address by following this and this strategy. Okay, so this has been reflected in these two paragraphs. It means you are going to claim that this kind of work has not been addressed. This problem has not been addressed till this point of time. Social relevance, you can see in this particular scene. I will read the statement. The toxic, carcinogenic and neurological effects of BTEX are well established, and the adverse health effects are too slow for early determination, and hence reliable sensing BTEX seeks serious attention. What does it mean? It means that we are talking about the adverse effect of BTEX, this analyze, and our result, our outcome is going to address these societal issues. So this is how the social relevance can be addressed in your manuscript. And then credibility, third is going to be credibility. You can see as far as credibility is concerned, you need to make this kind of statement. You can see our group has already reported that the central metal ion in MPs plays a decisive role in enhancing sensor behavior. And this number, what does it mean? It means that we are talking about our prior work. We are talking about prior work. Similarly, here also in this paragraph, a similar kind of statement we have made, and we are trying to tell the reviewer that we have already done some preliminary work in this particular area. This has already been published earlier, right? And those, of course, those journals should be index journal. If you are having index journal, then obviously it will be easier for you to claim your credibility. So this is how the novelty, social relevance and credibility can be reflected in your investigation. Then experimental details. In experimental details, you need to mention like what kind of materials you have used, what kind of like experimentation you have done, what kind of instrumentation you have used, that need to be mentioned. Materials and method, here, like as far as if you are from science discipline, then you can mention what kind of chemicals you have used, what kind of materials you have used, which methodology you have used for doing experiment, that can be mentioned, right? And this is very important. Don't do copy paste from your earlier publication. This is like very common mistake the research scholars are doing. Like, since they are using, because it is quite obvious, like if you have already published few manuscript, like few papers earlier, you are not going to have different methods. You might be tempted to same copy paste it from your earlier publication. So don't do that, because if you are doing that, then again you will be like putting you trouble in terms of the self plagiarism. You need not do that. As far as the social science related investigations are concerned, then it could be location specific data collections. Like if you are collecting data, then you need to mention like what was the location, what was the whatever participants you have in, as far as the data collection data survey is concerned, how you have selected participant, what was the eligibility criteria, how you have selected, what was the control, right? How can what kind of group study you have done, what were the participation rate, that need to be mentioned very carefully. And then whatever, again, like this is related to the social science people, or maybe even science also, if you are doing some survey type investigation, then what kind of variables you have used, what are the potential confunders you were having, what kind of modification you have done regarding data source and measurement, what kind of, you need to provide all those sources, laboratories, methods. If you are having bias, like for example in data collection, sometimes you may be having bias. Let us say for same purpose you are collecting data from metropolitan city, and as well as you are collecting data from some rural area, right? Let us say you are doing survey of some educational institution. So the one HEI located at Vadodara cannot be similar to located at one of the very interior part of Gujarat, right? So in that case you need to have some bias. So what kind of bias you were having, what kind of study size, I mean duration, I mean like study size means like what was the duration, like whether you have considered Gujarat as a study of investigation, or country as a whole, or only couple of state, similar kind of study size you need to mention. And these are some of the example. I'm sure this may not be readable for you, but you can see here, this talks about the study size numbers, what are the number of cases. This talks about the recruitment means like how they have considered eligibility. This talks about the eligible data collection, what was the method of data collections. Similarly, if you are using statistical method for the interpretation of data, then you need to mention all the variables, what kind of variables you have. You have to mention what kind of statistical methods you have utilized, what kind of cross sectional study you have done, that you need to mention. You can see these are some of the example. In this example I try to mention here, you can see here, these are the variables that, because whenever you are doing statistical analysis by some tools, you need to do some adjustment of variables. So what kind of adjustment you have done, that you need to mention. What kind of statistical models you have used, right? Let us say here it is mentioned regression adjusting model. So that kind of, what kind of models you have used, so that you need to mention in your materials and method. As far as result is concerned, this is summary of your main findings presented in the form of tables and figures. Sometimes there are some journals, they allow you to write result and discussion together. If it is not, then in results you can be quoting, you will be having figures and then tables, right? Now as far as figures and tables are concerned, sometimes journal may have some restrictions also, like maybe 5 figures, 10 figures, or whatever, right? Accordingly you need to modify your number of figures. You need to have the you need to have the collation of different figures as well, if there is a restriction on that, right? Specifically comparison you need not do here, truly speaking, but sometimes, because sometimes you can compare, but of course let us say you have one XRE data, right? Now you can compare that with standard data even in manuscript also, but for that purpose you need to have the courtesy, you need to have permission. So unless you have permission from the journal editor, I mean some journal agency, if the data is already published, that is from well-said journal, unless and until you have the permission from that journal publisher, you cannot use that figure. If at all you have permission, then you can compare your prior results as your result with prior published data as well. So similar kind of papers, I mean tables you can have, you can see. So you may have one or more table, more than one tables. This is just an example I'm mentioning here. and you can have this kind of figures also, right? Like let us say FESM images, some graphs, IDAX, right? Some UV, some IV characteristics. These are some examples. These are some sensing data. So that kind of figures you may be having in results and tables, right? Now, and then table you can also, tables and figure you can mention, right? And then as far as discussion is concerned, this is very, very important, because here this is like it, you see result introduction is important, and next would be discussion. Like whatever data you have, you need to compare your result with the prior published data, and you need to claim that this is novel, right? While comparison, therefore this is your moment to shine. That is why I mentioned this is your moment to shine, because this is going to be the place where you can compare your data with earlier published data, and you can mention that yes, this is how you are well ahead of published data. This is how you have novelty, because whatever novelty you have mentioned in the introduction, this is the point where you can validate your novelty. Validation of novelty, whatever claim you have done, you have made in the introduction part, this is going to be the section where you are validating yourself, your claim, right? And therefore you need to be very, very careful about writing discussion part, very careful about. Usually number from results should not be, sometime what happens, whatever number you have already mentioned, that should not be reflected here. But whenever you are talking about interpretation, let us say you have got one IV, right? One figure, right? One table. So you need to see like what kind of data you got in the table, and you refer some standard literature to interpret the data, how that data is going to be relevant, how that data is going to be very important for society, how that data you will take you one step ahead than the prior published work. For that purpose, you need to be very careful about writing discussion part, and mention significance of your paper. This is the place where the significance of the paper can be mentioned very comprehensively, and therefore you should be very careful. You can also mention limitations, because you should be very honest to mention limitations, what kind of bias you will be having. Similarly, whenever you are discussing your limitation, you should be very positive, right? You should not have negative approach writing your limitation. Sometimes what happens, you will try to hide your limitation. Don't do that, because whenever you are hiding, reviewer is going to catch you. Reviewer is going to catch you rather, right? So don't hide any limitation. You should be very courageous to put the limitations and say like what are the limitations of your investigation, and then how you are going to tackle those investigation in future, futuristic work. That statement you can mention, and you can mention the strength of your investigation. What is going to be advantages, what is going to be advantages achievement as compared with the earlier published work, that need to be mentioned. And last is going to be conclusion. In conclusion, you should not be repeat, because many a times abstract, the many research scholars, they repeat abstract as it is in conclusion. No, it should not be there. Rather here you should be more focusing on achievement rather, right? Because how your achievement is like something different than the previous work, right? That so you should be more focused on achievement. What kind of data you have achieved, what kind of a result you got, how those results are novel, how those results are taking you one step ahead, how even like this could be like a wonderful platform for other research scholars to do the futuristic research, that also can be mentioned. And if there are some potential public health implication, that also you can mention, like whatever data you got, this is going to be wonderful data for interpretation of this is going to be wonderful data for for application of this and this. So like that you need to mention. So your focus should be more on achievement, future directions, and is potential application, potential health, if at all are there, health implication if it is there. And then acknowledgement next will be acknowledgement. Here you need to write list of funding sources and all those participants, like there is need not be only funding agencies, but there could be some institutions, some individuals who help you for writing manuscript, doing this investigation, that need to mention in acknowledgement. And then this is, you can see one of the acknowledgement of our own paper. Authors express their sincere thanks to the Nano Mission, Department of Science and Technology for financial assistance. If you are having assistance from some institutions for characterization purpose, you can mention. for even interpretation of data. For example, you had the some significant assistance from one senior professor from one university or some research organization. You can go ahead and mention that the thanks to this and this for helping us in interpretation of data as well. So like that you can mention. Then reference section, there are certain sites, website, I mean to say, you can see the reference manager EndNote for citations. Like if you are using this software for managing your references, it will be easier for you to deal with the managing references. And most importantly, you need to follow the journal style, like what kind of, because every journal has its own style. You need to, some journal follow alphabetical, some journal follow the serial number. It depends. So you need to follow journal style for managing this. So general rules would be spell check, try to avoid the typos and errors, because whenever you are writing, there might be many typographical errors. Sometimes you might be having some, you might be committing very casual mistake. You should be very careful about that. Use correct and standard nomenclature. Sometimes you might be committing mistake here. And abbreviation, you should be very clear about abbreviation, right? Because whenever you are using abbreviation, try to define that in the beginning. You should be well enough consistent, as I mentioned earlier. There should be consistency between title, abstract, introduction, research discussion, and conclusion. If you are missing consistency, then again you will be having problem. After submission, what do you need to do? Like once you have submitted paper, what do you need to do? Most of the journal editor will make initial decision on paper to review or reject. Like once the editor is going receives the paper, he is going to quickly go through your title, abstract, entire paper, right? That is why like your abstract should be very, very effective. Your writing style should be very, very impactful. Sometimes what happens, if you are not able to convince editor straightway going to reject your paper. He will not allow your paper to go through the reviewing. If it is reviewing, then sometimes, like many journals have 2 or 3 referees. There is a blind reviewing system as well, blind and known reviewing. Like whenever you are talking about known reviewing, like journal always going to ask you submit the list of referee, right? Probable potential referee. So whenever you are submitting potential referee, what happens? Journal is going to send your one like paper, like there could be 2 referee to begin with. One is going to be known to you, other is going to be unknown to you, blind reviewer. And sometimes what happens, like known reviewer always in favor of you, but unknown reviewer may not be in favor of you because he might be very critical. In that case, if you are too much critical, if the unknown reviewer is too much critical and illogical, even if the unknown reviewer reject your paper, still your paper may be accepted by editor. But sometimes what happens, our known reviewer is always going to be our friend. So he is not going to be too much meticulous or too much critical. And without, without going through the manuscript, if he is sending the comment that this paper should be accepted without any modification, most likely that kind of, suggestions are going to be rejected by editor. And therefore, whenever you are submitting manuscript, you need to submit the potential reviewer, those who are really working in the area. They should be very meticulous. They should be very sincere. And then, like once the I will show you the flow chart rather. You can see once the paper is submitted, first of all it will confirm. Then initial decision can be taken by the editor. Editor itself can reject, and if he can convince editor, then it will go through the review process. Editor is going to assign the reviewers, and then reviewers are going to either accept or they may come up with the decision. What kind of decision? Like they may ask you to reject straightway, right? They may ask you to, they may ask editor to reject the paper. They may ask editor to send the paper for revision, or they may ask editor to accept paper without modification. But most likely, either you are going to have this or this, because without any modification, rarely paper accepted. So if at all you are fortunate to have this kind of comment like revision, then again it goes to the author. Author will receive the list of modifications, suggestions, right? And then author has to, like, you are going to get a couple of months for that, because I am also handling reviewer a couple of manuscript rather. I'm handling editor of a couple of manuscripts. This is what we are doing. And then once you receive the suggestions from reviewer, you have to incorporate suggestions, and all suggestions you did not incorporate. If you think that some of the suggestions are irrelevant, illogical, you need to be enough courageous to make a statement that this whatever suggestion we should make a very in sophisticated language you should defend that we agree with the reviewer, we accept the reviewer comment, but however we have got this and this limitation. Because of that we will not be able to incorporate this and this data in investigation. So politely, if you can submit your revision, obviously it is going to be considered by reviewer as well as editor. So then again it will go to the same reviewer, and then he is going to send the comment to the editor, and then that paper maybe most likely it will be accepted, because once it comes to the revision, 99% paper is going to be accepted. This is how the review process is going to happen. Last publishing tips: if you are working on research based papers, like if it is research oriented paper, ensure that you have enough number to justify sound statistical conclusion. Enough number, what I mean, incremental number. Like for example, if you have developed sensor, then in terms of what kind of incremental numbers you got, incremental improvement you got as compared to the prior published data. So unless you have incremental number, your paper is not going to be accepted. And if you are having, like, if you are like senior research scholar, I mean if you are professor rather, and if you are having many students working under you, so you should not go behind the number rather, because instead of publishing too many papers, you should publish quality papers, very few quality papers, so that your papers most likely will be accepted every time instead of redaction. Final advice: you need to have a practice of rewriting, because whenever you are drafting manuscript, sometime first of all you need to write on by paper, and every time you should not use computer, right? Take a piece of papers, write it there on pen. Sometimes you may your like introduction part you will be writing today, and then again you will be reading, you will be finding some mistakes, scratching out that paper, again rewriting. So that process has to be repeated several times. Rewrite, and continuously proof check. And most importantly, whenever you are proofreading, you need to check. You should be very careful of numbers, accuracy, and consistency. You need to see like whether you are consistent enough. Whatever numbers you are provided, whatever abbreviation you are provided, like one place you are providing one abbreviation, at other place you are providing another abbreviation. Don't do that. If you are losing consistency, if you are having mistakes in numbers, like it will be adversely affecting on your review. Sometimes it may happen like जो रिव्यूअर है उसका दिमाग आउट हो जाएगा कि यार ये क्या कर रहा है, एक बार एक फिगर दे रहा है, दूसरी बार दूसरी फिगर दे रहा है, तीसरी बार तीसरी फिगर दे रहा है. There is no consistency as such. You are claiming one thing in abstract, something different in introduction, something again different in like introduction, I mean result and conclusion, result and discussion, and again like something else in conclusion. So you are losing consistency. If you are doing that, you will be having horrible time, and most likely your paper will be rejected with very horrible comment. Let me tell you my bad. Sometimes it may happen, but don't get demoralized with that as well, right? And then at the end, conclusion, let me conclude. I mean, like the summary would be, if you are really honest, committed, and focused, then I'm sure you will be. This is what like the impactful drafting is required. Like honesty, committed efforts, very sincere efforts, and focused efforts are required for drafting any research manuscript. And thoughtfully drafted research manuscript will always lead to quality documents. It is for sure, which will have novelty, all three parameters: novelty, social relevance, and your credibility will also be reflected, and it will be easily accepted by any leading journal. And at the end, I would like to summarize with these wonderful quotations. Let me tell you the wonderful quotation of Steve Jobs. What we said: great things are never done by one person; they are done by the team of people. Even drafting a manuscript is also same thing. Whenever you are working, if you are working alone, definitely you cannot do miracle. If you are working together, you are most likely capable of doing miracle. The same thing is true in drafting manuscript also. The drafting of manuscript, like if it is a research group, like I would suggest you to like prepare draft by one manuscript, it should be revised, it should be reviewed by another research scholar and another professor, and at least there should be 2-3 professors, right? 2-3 teachers, 2-3 research scholars. One should have, everybody should have some his own, strength. Like one could be good in writing, other could be good in reading, like meticulous reading, observing, pitfalls. Other could be good in language, and third could be good in experimentation. So like that, if you're having that kind of people together, you are obviously most likely uh, 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 doing miracle in this particular aspect. So with this, I would like to stop here, and I would like to request organizer to initiate question answer session. Now it is over to organizer.
Thanks a lot, sir. It is always a delight to hear from you. And now we'll take up the question and answer session.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please. I'm here.
Hello.
Yes, madam. Go ahead. I'm here.
Yeah. And Dave sir wants to ask something. Dave sir.
Yes, please. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
This is not a question, but rather a request.
Okay, sir.
You have presented a very detailed and to the point presentation on a good paper writing, how to prepare, draft up a good paper. I think as a corollary, all the participants in this audience would like to hear from you how to select a good problem. Some other talk in future when ITMU can arrange. How, as I said, this is not a question, but this is a request. How to select in your own field a good research
okay.
problem.
Yes, I agree, sir. This is very, very good question for research scholar. I thank you very much, sir, for asking this question, because response to this question is going to be very, very useful for new research scholar particularly, because most of the time they commit mistake in identification of problem itself right in the beginning. So for that purpose, my what I usually do in my research laboratory, usually I ask a student to begin with. Whenever somebody is coming to me for joining my research group, I always ask them to spend some time with my research scholar for a couple of days, maybe for 1 week time. So the student will be spending time with the research scholar in the laboratory. He will be looking at like what kind of experimentation this particular all the students are doing, what kind of experimental facilities this group is having, what kind of strength this group is, what is the focus, right? So that within 1 week time, he will be able to understand what is his interest, what is his area of expertise, what is his area of interest, and whether it is going to be proper matching, whether this group is going to be a proper group for him to join, right? So I usually ask student to do this exercise for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, right? And if after that, if student wishes to stay with you, if student wishes to continue in our research group, the next exercise I always ask student to do. What is that next exercise, sir? I ask student to have a quick review of what kind of experimental facilities my group is having, what kind of research we are doing, and what would be his priority, right? And along with justification. So I will be asking him to spend again another week and prepare one PPT. So in PPT, after 1 week, what he will be doing? He will be making a small presentation based on what kind of facilities I am having, what kind of research we are doing, and out of those research area, what would be his area of interest, and along with justification, right? So properly what happens, to begin with, he was not having any idea. Later on, after a couple of maybe 1 month time, he will be having idea that okay, out of this 6 to 7 area in which this particular group is working, I am compatible with one particular area, right? And then once I come to know that okay, he is more inclined towards one particular area, Then I ask him to do go through the fundamental aspect, like maybe go through some books and read fundamental issues. Let us say, for example, a sensor, right? I ask them to understand what is sensor, what are different types of sensors, the fundamental aspect of that sensor topic. Then I will ask him to make a presentation of again the fundamental aspect, and then based on his inclination, I will be asking him, okay, now your fundamental is okay. Now you go through some research papers, some review research papers to begin with. Why review research paper? Because through review research paper, he will be able to understand what is happening across the globe, what kind of research is going, right? What kind of problems are being tackled by various research groups. He will be able to understand, and then he will be able to fine tune himself, because this will help him to fine tune himself with different problems. And then on the basis of that, I will ask him to come up with broad topic to begin with. So broad topic could be, let us say, in my research group, we are working on two different kind of sensor. One is like VOC sensor, other is heavy metal ion sensor. So I will be asking them, okay, would you like to have a part of VOC sensor group or heavy metal ion sensing group? If he says okay, part of VOC sensor group, this was his broad selection topic, then I will be asking him to, okay, now you go through the various research paper in which you will be fine tuning your material aspect, like what kind of material you will be working on, what kind of methodology you will be using for material synthesis, what kind of methodology you will be using for like characterization, and then particularly the detection, what kind of focus you want. Let us say VOC, which VOC you want very specifically, whether it is carbon monoxide, whether it is like S2S, very specifically, right? And then I will be asking him, like, what is happening in that area. Let us say, like, he identified material, he identified VOC, he identified like detection technique, like three proper important steps. And then based on these three steps, I will be asking him to go again, do further literature review and see like what is happening elsewhere, identify. Then I will be asking him, I usually do this, okay, you select at least 50 to 70 papers, research paper, do the segregation of research papers based on the topic, based on their objectives, based on their methodology, based on their conclusion, and then from the group, and then tell me what kind of objectives that one particular group is doing, like what kind of objectives they are having, what kind of methodology they are adopting, what kind of interpretation tools they are using, what kind of research they are having, what kind of achievement they have, and what are the pitfalls in their investigation, and then what would be your strategy to tackle those pitfalls. If the students start from this as a broad focus, and if he can focus to a very, very narrow area, he will be compatible, very much compatible. He will be knowing fundamental aspect, he will be knowing minute details of the topic, and he will be able to understand what is happening elsewhere. What are the potential, what are the good journals, what are the potential research groups working across the globe, and he will be definitely able to do very, very novel work and will be able to publish his or her data in impactful journal. Even like I'm asking my MSc student to do this practice, because in my university we are teaching research methodology at MSc first year level, and I'm the only person who is teaching research methodology, right? And I'm not teaching conventional research methodology. Rather, I'm teaching them how the problem identification can be done, how literature review can be done. And then in second semester, we ask them to do that exercise: literature review, broad topic, fine tuning a topic, setting up formulation of hypotheses, setting up objectives, methodology, probable outcomes, right? And then third semester onwards, third and fourth semester, the student will be working on that topic. And let me tell you, my sir, there are many students, they are coming up with Scopus index paper during their MSc in my laboratory. There are many students, and they are very happy. And I'm not compelling them to work in my with me after their MSc. They are free bird. After MSc, they want to go abroad. Many students going. If they want to join some other laboratory, they are free to do that, because I'm not asking them to join with me only, because I will be having limited number of seats available for PhD. So this is what we are doing, sir, for problem identification.
So that is very impressive, sir. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your response to my question.